Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. In this video, we will start solving questions using the tables and the methodology that will be consistent throughout the course. In this case, Sarah died on August 29th, 2018. At the time of her death, and this is important because whenever we are solving a case, we need to figure out who were the relatives alive at the time of death rather than who are the relatives alive today, because that might have changed. So in this case, at the time of her death, following relatives were alive: mother, father, husband, two sons, three real sisters, and grandmother. She left behind money and personal items with a total worth of $70,000. She owes a loan of $10,000, and she made a will to give $10,000 in charity. As a first step, we see what is the distributable property. So we need to take the total wealth, take out the loans that need to be paid, and take out the will that the person made. Of course, if the will is excessive of 1/3 of the remaining wealth, then we will only limit the will up to 1/3. In this case, 10,000 is within the permissible limit. So we have $50,000 that need to be distributed. This is the template we will be using in solving all the questions. The first step is to write the name, the date of death, and the distributable wealth. So after this step, we write down the relatives, the heirs, or the potential heirs who are left behind. And in the first column, we write the count. So in this case, we have mother, husband, father, two sons, three real sisters, one maternal grandmother. Next step is to find the shares from table 1. If you keep the conceptual model in mind, what we are trying to do is to find out among the Zawul Furuz which of the relatives are alive. Are there conditions that are specific to their shares meeting or not? So let's do that from table 1. We have mother. So let's find mother in table 1. Mother has several conditions that she can potentially meet. First condition is that she gets 1/6 if she has children or ikhwa or a husband plus a father. Now we do see that Sarah has two sons, which means that she satisfies the condition of having children. And we only need one of these three conditions to meet. So mother gets 1/6, and we put that down on our column. Next, we look for husband in table 1. And husband has two conditions. Let's see which one matches. Condition 1 is husband gets 1/2 if there are no children. And condition 2 is the husband gets 1/4 if there are children. So in this case, it will be 1/4. Let's look at the father in table 1. There's only one condition. If children are present, then father gets 1/6. Let's look for son in table 1. Well, you know what? We don't find son in table 1 because son is not part of Zawul Furud. Son is in table 2. So we ignore that for right now. Let's look for real sisters in table 1. Real sisters have two possible conditions. First condition is if the real sisters are 2 or more, which in this case we have 3 sisters, and they can only get this much share if there are no children, father, father's father, or real brother. In this scenario, we see there's a father and there's also children. Any one of them would have cancelled this condition. So we don't give anything to real sister over here and wait for the table 2. Maternal grandmother has one condition, that she would get 1/6 if there is no mother. But we have a mother in this case, so we also ignore maternal grandmother in table 1. Now our next step before we go to table 2 is to get the LCM of the denominators to divide the pizza into pieces that can be distributed. So over here the denominator would be 12. We put this down in our total, and 1/6 will turn into 2/12, 1/4 will turn into 3/12, and 1/6 will turn into 2/12. We have already distributed 7 shares, 2 plus 3 plus 2, and we have 5 more shares to distribute. So let's go to table 2 now and find out who comes first as we move from left to right and give all the shares to that person or that category. And over here we see the first one that comes up is son. So son would get the rest of the 5 shares, and the people following after that would not get anything. Now remember one point in mind, that if in this scenario we also had daughters, then the son and the daughters, as they come in the add-on, they both would have shared the total shares. So we assign the 5 shares to the son and now we have distributed all of the shares. In the next column, we are now trying to figure out what's the share of each category. Now we need to see how we can divide these numbers easily. Of course, mother will get the 2 shares, husband will get the 3 shares, father will get 2 shares, but there are 2 sons and we have to divide 5 among 2 people. So this number is easy to divide, and you know that every son will get 2.5. But for the sake of consistency and make the calculations in whole numbers, what we can do is, well, this 5 has to be divided into 2 parts because there are 2 sons. Since we need to divide this into 2 parts, we can multiply the whole column by 2, by the number that it needs to be divided with. This way we will keep our calculations in whole numbers. So when we do that, 2 turns into 4, 6, and 5 will turn into 10, and we now have a total of 24 shares. This way this 10 can easily be divided into 2 parts and still remain a whole number. The share of each person now will be 4, 6, 4, and for sons, each of them will get 5 out of 24. In the last step, we calculate the share in terms of the wealth that we are trying to distribute. So over here, for mother, it would be 4 divided by 24, which is the total parts, multiplied by 50,000. In this case, she will get 8,333.33. For the husband, it will be 6 divided by 24 into 50,000, and he will get 12,500. The father will get 8,333.33, and each son will get 10,416.66. Now again, this is the share of each son. The other son will also get the same amount. And this is how we have divided $50,000. And our case is done. Let's take another case, for example. In this case, Umar died on September 2018. Leaving behind a total wealth of $60,000. He made a will to give $10,000 in charity to a school. At the time of his death, the following relatives were alive: mother, real brother, 3 sisters, 1 maternal sister, 1 mother's mother and mother's brother, and 2 father's brother. And we are now going to calculate what's the distributable wealth. The total wealth was $60,000, the will was $10,000, so we have $50,000 to distribute. We start with our template, writing down the name of the person who died, the date of death, and the distributable wealth. The next step is to write down the relatives who are left behind and their count. So we do that, and now we move to table 1 to find out which of these relatives are present in table 1, and if their conditions are met, then we assign them a share. We start from the top. Mother would get 1/6 if there are children present, or ikhwa present, or husband and a father both are present. So in our case, we see that the ikhwa condition has been met. And if you remember, ikhwa was if someone has 2 or more of any types of siblings. So it could be real, paternal, or maternal siblings. It could be brother or a sister. And if the total of them is 2 or more, then they satisfy the condition of ikhwa. So over here, mother will get 1/6. We now look for maternal sister. Now remember, maternal brother and maternal sisters get the same share, 1:1. So we are just going to find maternal MT. We won't find maternal brother and maternal sister listed separately. The conditions are if there are 2 or more, so this does not meet our criteria here. So we go to the next one, which says if there are total of 1 maternal sibling, if there are no children, father and father's father, then that person will get 1/6. Our conditions is met. There is no children, there is no father or father's father, so our maternal sister will get 1/6. Next, we look for real brother in our table 1, and we don't find real brother in table 1, so we move on. Real sister is present in table 1. So if the real sisters are 2 or more, which is true for our case, she will get this share only if the condition is met, that is, if children, father, father's father, and real brother are not present. In our case, we have the real brother present, so the condition is not met, and we move on. Then comes mother's brother, which is not present in this table 1 at all. Actually, is part of Zibul Arham, the 3rd tier of relatives, so they would not get anything over here. Then we move on to father's brother, which is again not present in table 1, so we move on. So now we have 1/6 assigned to the mother and 1/6 to the maternal sister. Our lowest common multiple remains 6. So we have assigned 2 shares total, and we have left behind 4 shares that are still needed to be distributed. We go to table 2 now and find out who gets the rest of the 4. We move from left to right and we don't find a son, son's sons, son's son, father or father's father, but we do find a real brother. So real brother will get the rest of the 4. But wait a minute, there is also real sisters. This is an add-on, which means the 4 that is going to be distributed will be distributed among the real brothers and real sisters with a ratio of 2:1, because this is among those relatives who get 2:1 in male and female distribution. And that is mentioned in this detail with the asterisk sign. So 4 is assigned to this category, not only real brothers, so we also include real sisters in that. So how many parts do we really need to divide this 4 into? We have 1 real brother and 3 real sisters. And over here we know that brother gets twice as the sisters. So we multiply the number of male by 2 plus the 3 of the sisters, so total 5 parts that we need. 4 is not easily divided by 5 without getting fractions, so let's just multiply this whole column by 5 and use 5 as the multiplier. So 1 will turn into 5 and 4 will turn into 20 and 60 will turn into 30. So we have now identified the share of each category in a way that can easily be divided among these in a whole number. Now we go to the next column, which is share of each person. Over here mother will still get 5, maternal sister will still get 5. This 20 will now be divided into 5 parts, which means that value of each part would be 4. Since the males over here will get twice as females, so they will get 2 parts. 4 plus 4 will be 8, and each of the sister will get 4 parts. So for the share of each person, we have 5, 5, 8, and 4 out of total of 30 parts. Next, we find the share in terms of wealth, which is 5 divided by 30 into 50,000, and over here it will be 8 divided by 30 into 50,000 and 4 divided by 30 into 50,000, and we get the shares of each individual. This way we have divided our property and we are done with the case. Let's move on to the next case. This is Zainab, who died on November 4, 2018, leaving behind $120,000. She made a will to give 1/3 to her daughter's children. At the time of her death, the following relatives were alive: mother, 2 daughter, 1 mother's mother, father's real brother's son, father's paternal brother's son, and we are now about to calculate the distribution. The total wealth here is $120,000. She made a will for $40,000, which is the 1/3 of the property, and the distributable wealth over here is $80,000. Let's start with our template. We write the name, we write the date of death, and the distributable wealth. Then we put down the relatives who are alive. It's going to be mother, daughter, mother's mother, and then father's real brother's son, and father's paternal brother's son. We go to table 1 and we find the share for mother. In the conditions, we see that mother gets 1/6 because children are alive. In this case, the daughters are alive. So mother gets 1/6 and we put that down. We go to the share of daughters in table 1 and we find that daughters, if there are 2 or more, and the condition is that sons are not present or alive, then the daughters would get 2/3, and we put that down as well. And then we go to mother's mother. She would not get anything since the mother is alive and condition is not met. And the other relatives are not present in table 1. So we have distributed some shares. The LCM of the denominators is 6, and we have distributed 5 parts of the 6. We still have 1 more part to distribute. So we go to table 2, and in table 2 we start going from left to right, and we find no one alive among these relatives, among son, son's sons, son, father, father's father, real brother, real sister, paternal brother, paternal sister. And then we go on to the next column, which says the extended residuary. Remember, these are the extended male relatives, like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said in the hadith, that give the fara'id, the distribution, to the people who are ahl, and then whatever is left behind, give it to the closest male relative. So this is the column for which we need to consult table 3 to find out who qualifies in this and who is the closest among the remaining male relatives. So we go on to table 3. In table 3, we will find out that who among these two relatives are the closest. So we look for father, real brothers, son, son, which in this case would be father's real brothers, son is number 37, and father's father, paternal brothers, son, which in this case is 46. And if you remember, the lower the number, the closer the relationship. So the closer relative among these two would be father's real brother, son. We put these numbers down and we have identified who among these two is the closer one. So the remaining one goes to that person, which is father's real brother, son. Now the share of each category in this case is simple because 4 can easily be divided by 2 and we don't need to use a multiplier here. So we have 1, 4, 1 and total parts are 6. For the share of each person, the 4 parts of daughters will be divided into 2. So each person will get 1 part from mother out of 6. Each daughter will get 2 parts out of 6. And this relative, which is father's real brother, son, will get 1 part out of 6. We do our calculations and we get our numbers down, and we have now distributed the wealth. This was an example where we used table 1, 2, and 3, and that's why the question is constructed this way. Again, to remind you, table 3 is very rarely needed. Most of the cases will be solved between table 1 and table 2, but for the purpose of this course, we need to understand how to solve rare scenarios as well. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.